Hello, my name is Ralph Kubek. I'm part of the team at Workplace Apps who is focused on bringing solutions into the Acumatica marketplace. The focus of today's recording is our quality management solution, QMS, that we have released for Acumatica. Before we jump into the product, I would want to spend some time on this particular flowchart to explain what we've done. First, we need to build out an infrastructure, which on this screen is under test definitions. We need to create test plans, specifications, sampling criteria, test rules, evaluation rules for the quality testing process. We then need to link them into Acumatica. We did that at the item group/class level. We've done it at the item master level. We've also done it in a way that you could have different tests based upon the vendor or the customer. And finally, we create an infrastructure to do stability testing in situations where the user might need to test something every 30 days, every 60 days, once a year. We then determine within Acumatica when someone might want to do QC testing. Could be when something's received, when it's produced, finished, or in work in progress, when an item is shipped, when a kit assembly is done. I just might want to inspect something. And as we just spoke, we also have time-based stability testing. When we trigger an event, that creates a transaction within Acumatica that we happen to call a QC order. That QC order is the transaction we use within Acumatica to accumulate the details needed, evaluate the details that were accumulated, and make a determination whether that particular test is going to pass or fail. If it passes, it moves back into inventory. If it fails, you'll see how we can create a nonconformance as well as a corrective and preventative action within our QMS system. The end result for something that fails is within core Acumatica, you either rework the item or you return to vendor, or you might scrap it out. With that level of understanding, let's jump into the product. I'm going to go to the main QMS menu, and I want to start with our preferences. A lot of details on this preferences screen, but for this overview, I really want to focus in on the bottom of the screen and what we're doing when items are received, when items are going through ad hoc inspection, when they're coming off the assembly line, and that is we want to quarantine those items. We want to be able to limit what can be done to an item. Can it be shipped? Can it be used, etc. In this case, we're using a location ID, i.e. I'm going to use the term bins within Acumatica. We're using the Acumatica bin location setup because that will allow us to control whether an item could be moved, whether it could be shipped, whether it could be sold. Also allow you to make determinations of how it's going to be viewed in terms of being available for use, etc. Next to the next pillar within QMS, which is tests. Tests have a name, have a description. We then have three different types of testing: numeric, alphanumeric, Boolean, Boolean being yes or no. We then have test categories and test methods. Those are tool ways that you can group items for analytical and reporting purposes. We then have a quality control QC tool master. That master allows us to identify tools, identify whether they're active, on hold, retired, in calibration. We also denote the next calibration date as well as the last calibration date, and you can begin to use some core Acumatica features to alert you when calibrations need to be done. If this is a numeric value, we then indicate the unit of measure that we're going to be using. We then allow you to denote lead time and duration for a test. In some cases, tests could take multiple days to perform. We're in a situation where it's Tuesday and we might need to ship an item on Friday. The system could then begin to give you some information that you should start the testing process today in order to make that shipping deadline. The next pillar within QMS is quality control plans. Quality control plans is a group of tests that are combined for the purpose of being a template and applying them to items, which we will look at next. QC plan details has a name, a description, have revision and effectivity date control. At the bottom of the screen, we begin to add the tests that we want to use within this plan. We bring them over. We will identify the severity level, very critical in terms of how we evaluate tests. and you'll see there is major, medium, and minor settings for those. You could also define your own. Ifs were alphanumeric value, you indicate the value that you're expecting. If it's true false, you indicate what's passing, true or false. If it's a numeric value, what are the minimum, target, and maximum value ranges for that test? Along with setting up the test, we indicate the result criteria. We've already talked a little bit about severity level. And when we're performing tests, we have three methods, three criteria to use: rigorous, moderate, flexible. This is where we define the maximum amount of defects that are allowed under each of those situations, which will then allow us to determine whether a specific QC order passes or fails. Different levels, because we might have rigorous testing when an item is new or when we have a new vendor, and we might allow more defects later on in the product life cycle or as we've used that vendor for a period of time. So those are the core setups within Acumatica QMS. Let's move to the item class area. On the item class screen, we can now see there's a QC tab. This is where we're able to take one of those QC plans we just indicated that we had. We then indicate if it's going to be moderate, flexible, or rigorous, again, used in evaluation purposes. We indicate whether this is going to be 100% inspected or whether it's sampled. And if it's sampled, we then indicate the sampling plan. We then, going back to the graph, we then have a variety of places to do QC: receiving, shipping, production, and this is where we associate a particular test plan with a specific event. Bottom, we see the generic information that was brought in. We do have the capability to take that generic template and make changes so that this test is now unique for this particular item. The importance of putting these at the item class level is we have the capability of applying these tests to all of the items that are within that particular item class. Also, when items are added to inventory, when they are associated with a particular class, they will inherit the tests associated with that particular item class. Now let's go back into inventory. Let's look at a specific stock item. We're going to look at the shell. Again, there's a screen that indicates we have a quality control tab. We have global test plans, same as we went through within at the item class level. We take a plan, what's going to be the result criteria, how are we going to inspect it, what is going to be the sampling if we needed one, and then we identify when that plan is going to be used. Again, this could have been copied in from a generic setting, and I'm going to indicate that I'm going to override this particular test for this particular item. Notice I do have vendor test plans. Again, common for people to have a testing plan for their primary vendor, which might be different from their secondary vendor, which might be different from a vendor that's coming on off of probation. Able to take a test plan, any test plan we like, again, denote the result criteria and how we're going to be inspecting them. Same capability as we're doing QC for shipping. We have the capability of having a unique test plan for a particular customer. Finally, on this screen, we have a complete history of the changes that were made to the particular test plans for this particular item. Now let's go into purchasing and let's write a purchase order and see how QC affects the purchasing process. I'm going to go ahead and write a purchase order. I'm going to write a purchase order for this item called shell. I'm going to take it off hold, save it, I'm going to approve it. All standard steps that you would take within core Acumatica. I'm going to receive this PO from this screen. Go to the allocations tab, and for a variety of reasons, I'm going to put in I have a unique lot number for this item. This class was set up that I need to have an expiration date. All standard receiving, as you can see so far within Acumatica. Now I'm going to release this particular receipt. This is where QC takes over. When the PO was written, it was written identifying that it was written for the wholesale warehouse. It was going to go into bin R1S2. Because this item requires QC, Based upon the setup, we are going to keep it in the wholesale warehouse, though we are going to move it to a quarantine location called QC location. And you can see I have a QC order number, transaction, numbered 484. If I were the person that did the receipt as well as did the inspection, I could drill into this QC order directly from the screen, but I'm going to change hats. Change hats, go to my QC dashboard. Dashboards within Acumatica are configurable, just as they are throughout the system. And I'm going to go into this particular QC order and look at the details and actually perform the inspection. First of all, at the header, you begin to see we know the type of inspection it is, we know the PO number, we also know the item number, we know the result criteria, all the details related to this particular receipt. Notice we are using Acumatica's attribute feature because in some cases we have customers that, along with entering in test results, also need to enter in static data for that item. We also are using standard Acumatica features related to files. So if there are some documents that were received that need to be associated with this particular test, if I have some mobile applications, I could actually take some pictures and upload them. The bottom of the screen is critical. This is where we'll enter in the results. So I'm going to go in and indicate, nope, this wasn't read. Yes, that item happens to be true. I'm going to indicate that this item failed this particular test. It was only 178, but it did pass this test. So now I call the results for that item. I get an indication of what is passed and what has failed. We do have a complete history of the transactions that took place in entering those results and by whom. The next step is to evaluate the results. The system is going to help me determine whether, based upon the samples we took, how many failed, going back to the result criteria, as well as the severity. It's going to determine whether something passes or fails. And for this particular example, I failed this test. We have the capability throughout the system to produce quarantine labels, release labels that might be associated with your unique processes. Next step in the process, I need to post the results. I need to post the results because that item was sitting in the quarantine location. We need to move it out of the quarantine location. And since this is an item that was rejected, typically our clients will take this item and move it into a material review board location. We now post those results. So what have we done? We've received an item, we've triggered a QC inspection, we've accumulated the details, we've done an evaluation, and this item has failed. Taking a little detour on this item, we've talked about NC and COPPA. I just want to indicate that from this particular screen, we can create a non-conformance transaction. And while there is a dashboard, I can drill into this non-conformance transaction directly from this screen. And our transaction workflow for non-conformance includes showing the non-conformance details, doing some root cause analysis, the actions that were taken, and the event history. On the bottom of the screen, all the details regarding the tests that failed are there, and I'm going to put in some added comments. Once this is done, for that step, I'm going to indicate the process has been completed, and I'm going to save that. That is a way that we are allowing a digital record to take place of who did that analysis. I can then add some root cause analysis. Why did this happen? It was bad material, and I'm going to add that it was bent. I'm going to save this. I could go in and actually just add a free form comments. Also was gray, not red. Once I'm done with the root cause analysis, I have the capability of creating a digital record. I'm done with that. I now have a complete record of when that was done and when it was received. I'm going to add a COPPA to this particular item. I then move into the actions taken. What are we going to do? We need a new part. I'm going to save that transaction. I'm going to mark it completed. And I'm now done with that NC record. Complete event history regarding who took what actions and when. I can go back to the root cause analysis and again add a corrective action. Corrective action is number 43. From this screen, I'm going to completely drill into that item. From this screen, I'm going to drill into that corrective action and move to that corrective action. Our corrective action workflow, we originate it, we then do an investigation, we have a corrective action, we have a preventive action, and then there's a process to validate, verify what was done. Workflow process, very similar to the workflow process that we just reviewed for an NC, where at each step there'll be an action completed, so we have a digital record of who did what when. I'm not going to complete a capo right now. There's a separate recording on corrective actions. I'm going to move back, and so that is the process that we would use to handle QC for receiving, as well as correct an NC. If that item had passed, we would have just posted it and we would have moved it into a bin where the item could be used. The next area of QC is production QC, and I'm going to look at a bill of materials. I'm going to look at a bill of materials for something called exhaust. And this is how we handle in-process QC. At each routing step, we can indicate that QC is required, and if QC is required, just like you saw in other areas, we indicate what test plans associated with that step, and we can see and also change those tests here. From the aspect of production, we gate transactions, which you'll see in a second, means that we will not be able to move from operation 10 to operation 20 until we have completed the QC required for operation 10. You see there's no test plan for the final operation 20. We made that decision because with an Acumatica, there's an unlimited ways that you can make a part. In most cases, the inspection that's done for a part is the same, regardless of how it's made. That's why at the item level, we indicate the test plan that's associated with an item when its inspection is completed. I'm going to now move into creating a production order. Show you how that works. I'm going to make an order for this item called exhaust. I'm just going to make one. I'm going to save it. I'm going to release it. And I want to do a move transaction. I'm now on the floor, and I've indicated that I'm done with operation 10, and I want to move to operation 20. As we talked, we're gating transactions, which means we are preventing an item from moving from one operation to another until that QC order is generated, or completed, I should say. I'm going to leave this screen. I'm going to change hats. I'm going to go back to my QC dashboard. And I would see that I now have a QC order in process inspection for that exhaust. I'm going to go in, same transaction, same way of entry. I'm going to go in and I'm going to pass both of these values for this purpose. I'm going to save these. I'm going to take an action to evaluate the results. Yes, I did pass. And now I'm going to post those results. Alerts would have been triggered. And now if I were on the shop floor, I could go back into maintenance for this particular order. I'm going to now go into actions. I'm going to do that move. And now I could do that move and move the item further along in the manufacturing process. I'm going to stick with the same order because now we're completed with operation 20. And I'm going to take this out of hold. I'm going to release this manufacturing order and move it out of step 20. This is where QC takes over. Again, we've talked about quarantining items when they're coming off the assembly line. So this item was going to go into the warehouse, was going to go into a receiving location. Since this item does require QC, it's going to be maintained in that warehouse. However, it's going to be moved into that quarantine location. Now, I could go back to the dashboard, but in some cases, the person doing this reporting, finishing the last step, is also the person who is going to enter in the QC results. So directly from this screen, I could get pushed into the screen, which is going to allow me to enter the results in, evaluate those results, and I'm now going to post these results because this item is within that quarantine location, and I'm going to go in and indicate that this one's fine, and I'm going to move it into the default location of where this item should go when production is done. So that is how we handle quality control for the purposes of production. I'm going to quickly go into sales orders next. I'm going to turn to sales order. Going to enter an order called shell. I'm going to order one of these. Standard Acumatica process. Next step is someone will want to create the shipment. I've now created that shipment. As with moving in production, we want to prevent an item from being shipped until QC has taken place. So I'm going to go ahead and confirm that shipment. You'll see that I get an error message, a message saying that I cannot complete that shipment until the QC order has been generated. So I'm going to go back to the screen, generate the QC order for this item. Again, I'm going to drill into this transaction directly from this screen. I could go back to the dashboard and access it there, but for today's purposes, I'm just going to go in directly into the screen. Same screen we've talked about, same screen you've seen before, and I'm going to indicate, yep, in this case it was red, and it does have a value of 100 in terms of bolts, and the pallet was stacked correctly. I'm going to save, evaluate the results. These results have passed, and now I'm going to post the results, posting the results indicating that I've approved those. Go back into shipping now, call up that shipment, and now I've been informed, so yes, I can go ahead and confirm the shipment and finish the normal process within Acumatica that's used for shipping. So that's an overview of the main processes where QC can support the inspection of items that are purchased, items during production, both WIP as well as finished goods, and how we can control the shipping process. Certificates of analysis are critical for a variety of customers, and I could go in and indicate I want to look at QC order 484. Going to run this report, and now I have the details for that particular lot and particular test that was done. I could also print labels. I have a variety of reports and inquiries. Important within the QC environment, not necessarily QC, is lot traceability. We have embedded that into the product, so I'm going to look at this item called shell. I'm going to look at a particular lot number. I'm going to indicate this is a raw material, so I want to look at what happened to this item going forward. Where did this item go to? So the system is going to go through, do a detailed analysis of that particular lot number, and on this lot number I could see when it was purchased, the various inventory transfers that it went through, what finished goods it was used in, then eventually where it was shipped to, who it was shipped to, including the sales order number. Some cases, slot traceability needs to look in reverse. Unfortunately, someone just gave me a call that we have a problem with this item CRU. They've indicated to me that they have a lot number that ends in 0. This is a finished good, so I want to do a reverse trace on this item. So this report's going to go in and provide me the details that I need to do some evaluation and make some decisions. In this case, it starts out with who it was sold to and when. I see the details of all the raw materials and all the inventory transfers that took place, with the end result of knowing where that item was actually purchased from, where the raw materials were purchased from. That's an overview of the QMS solution that we have provided for Acumatica. There's a number of recordings on each of the individual areas that we spoke about, as well as NC, CAPA, inspection plans, etc. Thank you for taking your time to listen. Feel free to reach out to Acumatica or your business partner for more information. Have a great day and be safe.